Record in 14 CR 1432, Mr. Jones does appear in custody. He's represented by Ms. Smith and Mr. Colvin. Mr. Rubenstein and Mr. Wade are both here for the people. Are we ready for our jury to come back to the courtroom, Mr. Wade?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Colvin?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and call for him then. Thank you. Please be seated. And for the record, our jury has joined us back in the courtroom. Welcome back. I can invite Captain Smith to, oh, there he is. He was behind the folder. If you'd retake the stand, sir, you're still under oath. And we left off with Mr. Colvin's opportunity for cross-examination, so whenever he wants to begin, I'll invite him to do so. Mr. Colvin, you're welcome.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'd like to start with talking a little bit about the Abby Jennifer Recovery Foundation, okay?
Okay.
So you indicated that they basically covered a wide swath of land, I think is what you said, is that right?
Yes.
And you worked with them on an ongoing basis to help guide the focus of their search, is that right?
Yes.
Specifically, and you referenced that you focused them into the Highway 50 area once those items were recovered along Highway 50, is that right?
Yes.
And that was a very intensive search they were engaged in that area, is that right?
Yes.
But they did a lot more searching than that, fair?
They did?
And they gave you progress updates, gave you maps of what they had done, is that correct?
Yes.
May I have permission to approach?
Yes, sir.
Sir, I can't show this to the jury. Could I ask you to, may I ask the witness to step over to identify us? So I'm showing you here what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit LLL.
Okay,
You recognize this?
I do.
And what is this?
This is a map that was provided to me by the Abby Jennifer Recovery Foundation.
Specifically a map showing search areas, is that right?
Correct.
And is this a true and accurate copy of the map that you were provided and in fact put into evidence?
Yes, it appears to be.
Okay, Judge, at this time, the defense would offer Defendant's Exhibit LL. L, 3 L's.
Triple L, Mr. Wade, any objection?
Your Honor, I don't object, and for the record, Mr. Colvin showed that to me over the break.
Thank you. Triple L is admitted.
Thank you. Thanks. May I ask the witness to assist me in publishing this?
Yes, that's fine. Thanks.
Mind holding it up with me? So, this in fact depicts Delta County, is that correct?
It provided me more than one map, and so that's why I need to look more closely at it. It does, it also depicts Mesa County.
Okay. Thank you. It depicts the area, not just Mesa County, is that correct?
Yes?
And there's marking, it looks like black marking, yellow marking, blue and orange marking on it, all of those were on the map when it was provided to you, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the blue marking down here, specifically, that is the Wells Gulch Road, is that correct?
That is correct.
That road's actually called Mesa Point Road, is that right?
I'm not certain whether, I don't know.
Okay. But that road goes up along the Wells Gulch area, is that correct?
Yes,
And that writing right next to that road going up Wells Gulch, that's not your writing, is that correct?
it is not.
That was on the map that was provided to you, is that correct?
It's correct.
And what does it say?
I believe it is foot search.
Okay. And that's directly in the area of the Wells Gulch, the gulch called Wells Gulch.
I think it's indicating the road.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to shift gears on you now, okay? We're going to talk now about the VK9 people, okay?
Okay?
And you were able to say the mouthful, VK9, et cetera, but if I refer to him as VK9, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do I understand you correctly that they send you a fax, that's the first you hear from them, is that right?
Yes.
Now, you've been in 2007, you'd been in law enforcement how long?
8 years.
Okay. And you were in a supervisory capacity, is that correct?
Yes?
And you had lots of experience in the investigations field, correct?
Yes?
And necessarily, as a sergeant, at that time, a sergeant in a supervisory capacity, you were well aware of resources that were available to you, is that correct?
Yes.
An example of that is you knew of and were able to reach out to the Abby Jennifer Recovery Foundation, correct?
Yes.
But obviously, that foundation was not the only resource that you knew of and that you could reach out to for assistance, correct?
Correct?
You had never heard of VK9 before that fax, is that right?
Correct.
Now, as an experienced law enforcement officer, you certainly were familiar with the use of dogs and dogs doing scent work in law enforcement capacities.
To some degree?
Well, you personally maybe hadn't done that work, but you knew they existed, right?
Yes.
I mean, Mesa County Sheriff's Department had canines at that time, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the fax that you received was offering assistance and claiming expertise that you were not familiar with. Fair?
I was aware that dogs certainly can be used for tracking and all of the above. So if anything, the difference or what was different about what they were offering was that they were able to track aged tracks.
Well, let's be clear. They were claiming that, right?
Correct?
Okay. And that concept was not one you were familiar with despite your experience in law enforcement. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. Now, you hadn't reached out to them. You've already told us that. So they necessarily became aware of the Mesa County Sheriff's Department, right?
They did.
And you were well aware at the time that they reached out to you that this case had been subjected to extensive media coverage, correct?
Yes.
More than just local media coverage, it had been subjected to national media coverage.
Drew national media attention early on in the investigation.
And national media attention frequently throughout the case. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. VK9 faxed you. They were not a local organization, correct?
Correct?
They were based out of the East Coast, correct?
Yes.
It's not every day you get agency, it's not every day you get people offering to help you on cases from the East Coast, right?
Not every day.
Okay. did you do any work to vet these people before you involved them in the case?
I do remember that they provided references, or at least 2 references, and I do remember calling those agencies. I did not document anything about the names of those agencies or the people that I spoke with or anything of that nature.
Okay. So we're clear, the people you contacted were the people they told you, these people will vouch for us, right?
Yes?
You didn't do any investigation with neutral parties that had interacted with them, is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. Now, you were aware that at the time VK9 contacted you, not only had this case been subjected to national media attention, particulars about the case had actually been reported. Is that fair?
Fair.
Specifically, the fact that a car had been burnt, that was out in the media, right?
Yes.
Photographs of that car and the location it was found being burnt, that's out in the media.
Yes.
The fact that Mr. Jones was a person of interest in the case, that was out in the media.
Yes.
You testified on direct examination that you had a briefing with them.
Correct.
And what I gathered from your testimony was the briefing was to give them some information about the case, but you certainly weren't going to give them everything that you knew about the case.
Correct.
And part of the reason you did that was because you didn't want there to be a circumstance where they were doing things based upon knowledge they had instead of what Doug said, right?
Correct.
I mean, that was a thing that you were cognizant of at the time, right?
I wasn't interested in them using the dogs to tell me something that I already thought. I was interested in what their dogs did or did not smell or I would say see, but that would be what you and I would do.
Right.
So
So this idea of not giving them specific information about the case that could affect what they do was not only something you were cognizant of, but it was something you were specifically trying not to do in order to affect the quality of their investigation.
yes.
Given the fact that you were cognizant of it, given the fact that it was important not to have that information out there, it would have been important to do an interview with them to determine exactly what they knew about the case. Would you agree?
I did not do an interview with them to determine exactly what they knew about the case.
Okay. You didn't do that, and to your knowledge, no one else did that either.
Correct.
And to your knowledge, no follow-up was ever done by any law enforcement to make those determinations in any investigative sense, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware that Ms. Platts and Ms. Jones claim to know nothing about the case other than what you told them in your briefing?
I'm unaware.
Okay. But you don't recall specifically what was said in your briefing, right?
I do not.
And that wasn't documented in any fashion, written down, recorded, anything like that?
Correct.
So, even if we attempted to validate what it is they knew, we can't even compare it to the briefing at this point. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Was the fax that was sent to you preserved?
Not that I recall.
Okay. So even the initial communication between VK9 reaching out to you, that's no longer available as far as we know, right?
To the best of my knowledge.
You indicated you took some photos, right?
I did.
And the photos you took were documenting search areas?
They were documenting areas that they conducted searches that they did not take pictures of themselves.
And Why didn't they take pictures themselves?
Part of it was during the dark, or it was at dark when the searches were taking place. Specifically, I remember there were searches in our impound lot, and those were late at night, and the reason for that was to utilize their time as much as possible. They were here for a short period of time. The pictures were not taken in the dark. It wouldn't show a whole lot, and so I went back and took pictures of the areas where we had searched, or where they had searched, so that they could use that in their reports.
Okay. So the photographs you're talking about that you took are the photographs of the impound lot, right?
My recollection, it was the photographs of the impound lot and the photographs of the inside, we call it the, well, we call it the Pepsi building,
Right.
but that's,
It's not really Pepsi's building.
it's a storage building where we keep vehicles and evidence.
So the photographs you took, particularly of the search at the impound lot, those are taken at the following day,
It's my recollection.
very next day as far as you know?
I believe so.
Okay. Going back to where I was trying to go, you didn't take any video, is that right?
Correct.
And you didn't take any photographs of the dogs actually working.
Correct.
In fact, Ms. Platts and Ms. Jones also took some photographs,
They did?
and to your knowledge, they didn't take any photographs of the dogs working.
Not that I recall.
So, as far as documenting the behaviors the dogs exhibited that the handlers are interpreting, there's no documentation of that at this time.
No photographic or video documentation?
Right.
Correct.
You are not a trained dog handler,
No, sir, I'm not.
and you, I assume, haven't had any classes or any type of experience in dog handling yourself.
My experience in dog handling is a third party. I've worked around dog handlers,
Sure.
primarily law enforcement dog handlers. I'm not a dog trainer, dog handler, canine officer, anything of that nature.
And so necessarily, because you're in law enforcement, and law enforcement uses dogs, you've seen that happen, right?
I have.
You've been there when that's happened.
I have.
But primarily, law enforcement, and specifically Mesa County Sheriff's Department, uses dogs for drug detection.
Yes.
What else?
The sheriff's office, we use drug detection dogs. There are other types of dogs that are used in canine. There are bomb detection dogs. There are tracking dogs used in law enforcement.
Right.
And there are, scent tracking dogs used in law enforcement. And then, certainly, patrol dogs. We, at the sheriff's office, do not use patrol dogs, but Grand Junction Police Department still uses patrol dogs.
So, Mesa County Sheriff's Department now only uses dogs in the drug detection field, is that right?
Correct.
And back then, that was what Mesa County Sheriff's Department used dogs in, right?
Correct.
So the most exposure you've had to canines doing law enforcement type work, I'm assuming, would be drug detection, right?
It's the most. I have had some experience with patrol dogs.
Okay. And that's primarily through the Grand Junction Police Department,
Yes.
right? But those are specific areas, you're not trained in those, that you've seen that though, right?
Correct.
What you've never been exposed to is dogs engaged in scent tracking, other than your experience with Ms. Platts and Jones, right?
Correct.
What you've never been exposed to is scent identification out of burned up cars, other than your experience with Ms. Platts and Ms. Jones, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, you testified Deputy Mike Miller was with you and assisting this day, is that correct?
He was.
And he's a dog handler,
He is.
but his dog is a drug detection dog, right?
Correct.
The quality of the work done by Ms. Jones and Ms. Platts would have to be evaluated upon its results. Fair to say? In other words, you're not qualified to judge whether or not they did good work in these types of searches, given your lack of experience. So you'd have to base it upon results, right?
Yes.
Oh, you identified the items that were going to be turned into scent pads, right?
Yes.
I mean, you personally were like, these shorts, this dress, that's what I'm taking out of evidence for these ladies to use.
That's correct.
And you didn't pull out any piece of evidence that you could associate with George Coraluzzo.
I did not.
And I don't even know if such evidence was in the possession of the Mesa County Sheriff's Department, but you didn't try to find evidence associated with Stephen Heald
I did not.
or Jose Tavera
I did not.
or John Livingston
I did not.
or Wayne D'Amico. You didn't even know who that was back then, right?
Correct.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Waite, redirect whenever you're ready, sir. Thank you.
Just briefly, Captain. You were shown the map that indicated the areas that had been searched, and you were pointing to the Wells Gulch area. Do you know what the date of that search was?
I don't.
Okay.
It
Do you
was-
know what, was it before or well, do you know if it was before or after the dogs did their search?
I don't recall. I know, or I certainly could review reports, and I can approximate when I was given those maps, and it would have been mid-August at some point, which is when the Abby Jenner I have more trouble saying that than I do the VK9 name. I know about when they wrapped up their search, and that was when they provided me those maps.
And that would have been in August of 2007?
I think it was August 17th of 2007 is when they provided me that map, but I may not be accurate about that date.
Okay. May not be accurate about the day, but approximate month.
Yes.
So that the searches that are noted on the map were searches that were done prior to that.
Yes.
Mr. Colvin asked you about checking Ms. Platt's and Ms. Jones's references. Was there anything about the information that you gained from checking their references that give you concern and keep you from employing their services out here?
Clearly not. If there had been, then we would not have invited them out to assist us.
Nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
Mr. Colvin.
Nothing based on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is he still under subpoena, Mr. Waite?
He is, Your Honor, for other issues, so we'll if he'll just stay in touch with us.
All right, thank you. You're still under subpoena, sir. Free to go now, but please stay in touch with the lawyers. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The people's next witness, please.
Your Honor, the people would call Sarah Platts to the stand, please.
Thank you. Feel free to stretch if anybody wishes. Thanks. I was going to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that tomorrow we'll be stopping at 3 o'clock, just so you remember that. Thanks. Good afternoon. If you could approach, I need to give you an oath before you testify, please. And we have a black cord stretched out across your walkway. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. If you have a seat in the green chair, please. Thank you. Mr. Colvin? Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have an instruction to give to you before the witness testifies. It's as follows. The rule in Colorado is that dog tracking evidence must be supported by corroborating evidence, and that standing alone, it is insufficient for a criminal conviction. Therefore, such evidence must be viewed with caution. It must be considered with all other testimony in the case, and in the absence of some other evidence of guilt, you may not convict Mr. Jones on the basis of the dog tracking evidence alone. You can proceed, Mr. Wade. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Would you state your name for us, please, and spell your last name?
Sarah Lynn Platts, and the last name is spelled Platts.
Ms. Platts, where do you live?
I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
And what do you do for a living?
I work for the Department of Navy as a supervisory supply technician.
Do you also have a full-time volunteer position?
Yes, sir.
What do you do as a volunteer?
As a volunteer, I am a search dog handler for several search groups, providing tracking information or tracking skills for lost and missing people.
Do you volunteer for a particular organization? You indicated there were several, is that correct?
Yes, sir. I have my unit, which is VK9 Sense Specific Search and Recovery. I am also a member of the Virginia Beach Search and Rescue Team, and also a member of the Virginia Beach Police Project Lifesaver Program.
How long have you been a dog handler for those organizations?
For VK9,
Now, can you say the name of the VK9 organization again for me?